The Galactic Confederation believed it had perfected space warfare. For centuries, battles among its member species were dictated by advanced AI strategists, flawless simulations, and mathematically modeled engagement protocols. Each ship moved, like a chess piece in a cold, logical dance, predictable, precise, and efficient. Then came Captain Rhea Morgan, and everything changed. Rhea was a human pilot, a decorated veteran of atmospheric dogfights during the Earth-Tyrian border skirmishes, brutal, low-tech conflict that had forged her instincts in real-time chaos rather than simulations. To the Confederation's war colleges, her experience was considered primitive, even laughable. The aliens believed humans still fought like animals, emotional, reckless, unpredictable. That belief was about to be shattered. As part of a diplomatic agreement, one human pilot was allowed to participate in a Confederation-wide fleet tactics evaluation simulation, a supposedly harmless test designed to compare strategic approaches. In truth, it was a subtle way for the elite races to remind Earth of its inferior status. Rhea was placed in a single aging Corvette-class starfighter, up against 5 squadrons of AI-assisted alien fighters from various species: Cathari interceptors, Yulon swarm drones, and the notoriously precise Enrelian cruisers. On paper, she didn't stand a chance. The aliens expected a short engagement, one burst of coordinated fire, and the human would be gone. But Rhea didn't follow the rules. Instead of aligning her ship with her AI-assigned trajectory, she disabled the auto-combat system entirely. She throttled the engines manually, tilted her ship into a stuttered barrel roll, and dove headfirst into the enemy formation. To the observing commanders, it looked suicidal. To Rhea, it was instinct. Using gravity slingshot techniques she'd refined flying through Earth's mountain canyons, Rhea turned the enemy's coordination against them. Her movements were erratic: spasmodic accelerations, sudden power cuts, inverted drift loops. None of the alien AI systems could track her. She exploited micro-delays between the AI's calculations and physical ship movement, dancing between weapon arcs with shocking precision. She used the debris field, meant to be a visual obstacle, as a trap, weaving between shattered hulls and decoying enemies into collision paths. At one point, she flew backward, firing blind through a gravity wake that confused enemy sensors. When a Cathari pilot tried to flank her, she turned off her engines, letting the vacuum pull her ship into a slow spin, then reignited the thrusters, at full reverse, blasting the enemy ship into a drift mine she had dropped earlier. The battle, which should have lasted mere seconds, stretched into 22 heart-pounding minutes. In the end, every enemy ship was either destroyed or forced to retreat. Rhea's own ship, though scorched and battered, remained operational. She exited the simulation zone with a smirk and one last taunt over the comms. Next time, try thinking outside the algorithm. In the command observation deck, alien strategists were stunned. Every AI system had flagged her behavior as nonsensical, erratic, or impossible to predict. Her success wasn't luck, it was something else. The analysts tried to replicate her maneuvers using their own simulators, but none of their pilots or AI constructs could perform them. They were too rigid, too precise. What Rhea did required improvisation. It required intuition, a human trait, long dismissed as obsolete in modern warfare. What should have been a diplomatic formality became a galactic sensation. Within hours, footage of the battle spread across interstellar networks, sparking debate and awe. One anonymous strategist from the Enrelian fleet summarized the situation best. The human didn't just beat us, she violated every tactical principle we hold sacred and made it look easy. Rhea Morgan had just rewritten the first line of the Space Combat Rulebook. Predictability kills. Chaos wins. And she was just getting started. Captain Rhea Morgan's stunning victory was still echoing through the halls of the Confederation Fleet Academy when a classified transmission sent shockwaves through military intelligence. The simulation had not been a simulation at all. Unbeknownst to Rhea, her trial by fire had taken place in a quarantine sector of space under covert surveillance. The supposed simulated enemies, those 5 squadrons she had obliterated, weren't training drones or mock fleets. They were live ships from the Threxan Dominion, a xenophobic isolationist species that had remained off the grid for over a century. The Threxans had been testing the Confederation's defenses, disguising their incursion as a simulation to mask their intentions. The test Rhea was assigned to had been hijacked by the Confederation's Internal Intelligence Agency Command Oversight Division, CODIS, as part of a top-secret operation known as Phantom Mirror. CODIS had deployed her ship to the actual incursion zone under the pretense of a tactical simulation to see how far the Threxans would push and what kind of response they'd provoke. The expectation was for the lone human pilot to fall quickly, thereby exposing the hostile movement for what it was. Instead, Rhea obliterated the threat before CODIS even confirmed its existence. Her triumph was not only unexpected, it completely derailed both the Threxans' covert operation and the Confederation's own intelligence plan. She didn't just expose the threat, she ended it before anyone could study it properly. And that terrified people in power. As soon as she returned from the operation, Rhea was pulled into high-level debriefings. What she believed would be a post-mission celebration quickly soured into aggressive questioning. Why did she disable the AI? Who taught her those maneuvers? Did she have prior contact with the Threxans? Was it sabotage, luck, or something else entirely? Rhea, unshaken, responded with blunt honesty. I saw a threat, so I neutralized it. Isn't that the job? Behind closed doors, arguments flared. Alien commanders, especially the Enrelians and Cathari, demanded disciplinary action. To them, Rhea had recklessly interfered with a sensitive operation and exposed a gap in their fleet's predictive combat systems. But others in the Confederation began to whisper the unthinkable. What if the human way of fighting was superior? The Threxan Dominion, meanwhile, was furious. They issued a formal protest to the Confederation Council, denying any aggressive intent and accusing Rhea of unprovoked aggression. But intelligence intercepts told another story. The Threxans hadn't anticipated resistance, not from a single corvette, and were now scrambling to assess the threat humanity posed. Their AI war calculus had labeled humans as low-threat anomalies, overly emotional and militarily backward. But Rhea's actions forced a rapid reclassification. Combat Priority Alpha, unpredictable threat species. Back on Earth, Rhea's victory sparked public celebration. She became a reluctant hero overnight. The footage of her ship corkscrewing through plasma fire became a symbol of human defiance and ingenuity. But Rhea herself remained detached from the media frenzy. She knew she had stepped into something far bigger than a simple training exercise. At a covert briefing, she was told the truth. Phantom Mirror had failed. The Confederation no longer had time to observe the Threxan threat from a distance. Her unexpected victory had forced the Dominion to accelerate their plans. You didn't just beat them, Captain, said Admiral Kelvar, a crusty Tarsari war veteran. You provoked them. You've thrown a wrench into their war machine before. It even started moving. They're going to come harder and sooner. Rhea's response was simple. Then we'd better be ready. The Confederation, still reeling from her unauthorized triumph, had a choice to make. Suppress the incident and sideline the pilot who broke the rules, or accept that humanity might possess a form of warfare evolution no AI could predict. Morgan had disrupted more than just a battle. She had exposed a lie, forced a war into the open, and shown the galaxy that humans didn't follow the rules of space combat. They rewrote them. Captain Rhea Morgan should have been court-martialed, or so many alien strategists believed. She'd disobeyed simulation protocols, shattered centuries of tactical theory, and exposed a covert war before the Confederation was ready. But instead of punishment, she was given something far more dangerous, a classroom. The Confederation Defense Council, under pressure from both Earth's delegation and certain forward-thinking military factions, quietly assigned Rhea to Project Apex, an elite experimental training program designed to explore non-traditional forms of space combat. Located on a remote moon in neutral space, the facility became a crucible for what came to be known as chaos doctrine. At first, the other instructors, alien veterans, AI tacticians and strategic theorists dismissed her role. To them, Rhea's success was an outlier, a fluke born of randomness. But Rhea wasn't interested in being liked. She was there to prove that unpredictability wasn't a glitch. It was the next evolution of warfare. She began training a mixed group of human and alien pilots using techniques no one else had ever seen: visual deception, using light distortion, and magnetic shadowing to make enemy sensors see phantom ships. Asymmetrical thrust patterns, deliberately mismatched engine output to create jittery, chaotic flight paths that confounded trajectory predictors. Emotional baiting, provoking enemy pilots with personal comms, chatter, and unpredictable pauses, triggering hesitation or overreaction. Kinetic drift traps, using gravity wells and debris clouds to channel enemy ships into zones with delayed explosives or spatial folds. These weren't tactics taught in war colleges. They were learned from ancient air combat manuals, improvised dogfights, and raw human instinct. Where alien pilots relied on precision, humans thrived in adaptation. Initially, the non-human trainees struggled. Species like the Unrelians, who evolved in perfect gravitational harmony, found the erratic maneuvers nauseating. The Cathari, who valued rigid formation discipline, couldn't fathom the idea of individual improvisation. But the human pilots adapted quickly, even enthusiastically. For them, it felt natural, almost fun. The breakthrough came when Rhea challenged a squadron of AI-piloted interceptors using only 3 of her human cadets in outdated fighters. The AI systems, programmed to model Confederation standard tactics, couldn't handle the sheer unpredictability. Rhea's team weaved, juked, and baited the interceptors into colliding with one another or firing at phantom decoys. It wasn't just a victory. It was a systemic collapse of the AI's logic tree. That battle was recorded and studied across hundreds of military installations. When analysts tried to replicate Rhea's maneuvers with simulators, they failed. Not because the inputs were wrong, but because the AI couldn't understand why the moves were made. An Aurelian data scientist finally coined the term, "Humans exhibit an intuitive combat pattern that blends reactive instinct with calculated chaos," rendering traditional prediction models useless. Rhea's teachings soon became codified into what the Confederation reluctantly began calling the Morgan maneuvers, a suite of tactics defined not by perfection, but by adaptability, emotion, and unpredictability. The galactic doctrine that had stood for over 500 years, founded on mathematical precision, was beginning to unravel. But not everyone welcomed the change. Some species saw this shift as dangerous. They argued that chaos doctrine could destabilize galactic order, encouraging rogue pilots and undermining AI command structures. Political pressure mounted to contain or restrict Rhea's influence. Earth, however, stood firm, backed quietly by several younger species tired of being dominated by ancient tactical orthodoxy. Meanwhile, the Threxan Dominion watched from afar. Their own AI war matrices, designed to forecast every known combat doctrine, had failed to anticipate Rhea's emergence. Worse, attempts to simulate her tactics led to catastrophic model crashes. To the Threxans, humanity was no longer just an annoyance. They were now an existential anomaly, something that didn't fit into the equation. Back at Project Apex, Rhea addressed her students before the final trial simulations. "We're not here to be perfect. We're here to be unpredictable. You don't win wars by playing the enemy's game. You win by flipping the board." The galaxy was about to find out what that looked like. The Threxan Dominion had been preparing for war in the shadows for decades. Cold, logical, and ruthlessly efficient, their fleets operated on the premise that war was a solved equation, a predictable series of moves and counter-moves. But when Captain Rhea Morgan shattered the Confederation's tactical framework, the Threxans realized their calculations were flawed. The variable they hadn't accounted for was human chaos. They responded the only way they knew how, with overwhelming force. Without warning, the Threxan Armada launched a full-scale assault on the Confederation's frontier worlds. Over 50 planets were attacked simultaneously. their orbital defenses collapsing within hours. Standard fleet responses failed miserably. Threxan ships anticipated every maneuver, every reinforcement path, every AI-based counterstrike. The Confederation's command structure began to buckle. It was a war designed to be over in a week. But Rhea Morgan had seen it coming. At Project Apex, she had trained an elite cadre of pilots, humans and a few alien allies willing to abandon the old ways. They called themselves the Irregular Wing, and their mission was simple: to fight like humans, not machines. Armed with outdated ships modified for unpredictability, the Irregular Wing deployed to the outer sectors, not as reinforcements, but as a disruption force. Their first strike was against a Threxan fleet besieging the mining colony of Vorta 6. While Confederation AI advised retreat, Rhea's team engaged using erratic swarm patterns, decoy drives, and stealth drops into planetary gravity wells. The Threxan formation broke apart within minutes. Their AI systems failed to track the chaotic variables. They couldn't predict when or where the humans would strike, and that uncertainty spread like a virus through their command systems. Rhea's pilots began operating behind enemy lines, hitting supply ships, scrambling communications, and hijacking Threxan signal protocols. They used misdirection, psychological warfare, and even false distress beacons laced with booby traps. The Threxans, who had never faced such behavior, began overcorrecting, diverting entire fleets to chase phantom signals while their real objectives collapsed. Confederation forces, seeing the success of Rhea's methods, slowly began adapting. Traditional commanders reluctantly authorized more Morgan-style tactics. Squadrons abandoned formation flying in favor of adaptive cells. AI systems were manually overridden. The result? The tide of battle began to shift. In the war's most pivotal moment, the Threxans launched a final push toward the Confederation Corps. A 400-ship armada led by their highest tactical AI, Unit C Theta Prime. Rhea, now given full operational command, led a mixed strike group of only 60 ships against them. The battle took place in the collapsed orbital rings of a dead world, thick with debris and unstable gravity wells. Rhea's fleet scattered across the chaos, deliberately blurring sensor readings, simulating engine malfunctions, and launching unpredictable wave attacks. Theta Prime's logic models began to break down. Conflicting variables overloaded its decision matrix. The AI stalled for 6 crucial seconds, enough time for Rhea to pierce the command ship's hull with a kinetic spike. The head of the snake was gone. The Threxan fleet fractured. Some ships turned on each other, confused by phantom signals. Others retreated into hyperspace with scrambled navigation data, disappearing forever. The war was over. Rhea Morgan didn't just win a battle, she forced a galactic reckoning. The Confederation formally retired its legacy space combat doctrine and replaced it with the adaptive engagement protocols, heavily based on Rhea's chaos doctrine. Humanity went from a backwater race to the gold standard in modern fleet tactics. Earth's admission into the Confederation High Command followed within the year. As for Rhea, she turned down a promotion to admiral and returned to training new pilots, those willing to trust their gut instead of a machine. A quote etched on the wall of the new Fleet Tactics Academy summed it up best. Space warfare was never about logic. It was about survival, and no one survives better than us. Captain Rhea Morgan.